Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Good morning. Please let me know in the chat box if you can hear me. Say yes, you can hear me, or if you can't hear me, please do let me know. I'd really appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. I just want to make sure that you can all hear me. Please just give me a wave or just say yes, you can hear me in the chat box. I would really appreciate that. All right, fantastic. Great. So I do apologize for that 1 or 2 minute delay. Sometimes you'll ask yourself, should you be doing this or not? It's always a scary thing to do, to be in public and, just to share your thoughts and ideas with everybody else. So, yeah, not too long ago, I remember somebody I think it was Beyonce who said, even to this day, as much of a big star as she is, not that I'm comparing myself to her, but, somebody who's experienced and is as well esteemed as somebody like her, she still gets nervous at times. So same thing applies here. So do forgive me for that 1 or 2 minute delay. But without further ado, we're going to jump straight in. And you know the drill, really. If you need to say anything, please feel free to type it in the chat box. If you have any questions, I will always take a look to see if I can answer that question. But it's generally good practice to leave the questions till the end. But I'll keep checking for those questions during the webinar itself. Toyosi, it's great to see you. Toyosi is from Nigeria. That's great to hear from you. I'm glad to see that you're here. Everyone, thank you. Thanks for your time. I promise I'm going to make your time this morning really worthwhile. And we are recording this, so I'll make it available for you later on. For those who don't know me, I'm KK Diaz. I'm a business strategist. We do, things like digital marketing. I'm also an author, and I'm just completely obsessed with helping businesses to grow. And I'm the CEO of A-Game Business Consulting, which is really the company that's presenting this webinar to you this morning. Our services as a company, we do business strategy. So today, for the next hour, you are actually going to get an idea of what that strategy looks like in terms of how we assist companies to formulate these strategies, methodologies we use, and I'll give you tips here and there that you can utilize yourself. And obviously, should you need help from us, feel free to reach out. We also do inbound marketing, digital marketing. We implement CRM systems, and we also develop people from a training perspective. Because I always say, in almost all cases, when you are developing a new strategy, in almost all cases, you need to develop your people's skills and abilities in order for them to match the new strategy that's required. And also equally so, you will typically need processes and systems and technology in order to help you execute the strategy. All right, just some quick house rules. Just do avoid distractions because there's so much that I'm going to be sharing with you today. You don't want to miss anything. Typically, the work that we do is sequential in terms of how we share the information. So it will be sequential. Make sure you don't miss anything because one stacks up and connects to the next piece, really. And I always tell the people listening to our talks, webinars, that we never do get rich quick schemes. So I hope that's not what your expectation is this morning. However, what we do share is very practical, but it's not easy to do. It's not necessarily easy. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it takes time, and that's why it takes time and effort. And that's why, folks, I'm sure you'll appreciate. This is why we don't have every business succeeding in the world. It's primarily because to do these kind of things, requires a lot of dedication, a lot of time commitment, and just some serious slugging. The traditional blood, sweat, and tears kind of approach here. So we've got a lot to cover, as I mentioned. If there are any technical drops, load shedding, whatever the case may be, please, if it happens on my end, just give me 2-3 minutes. I'll be back up running. I'll connect using other forms of connections. And if it's if you're having technical problems, please just feel free to just disconnect and connect again. All right, Swasisa says you can hear me. Thanks, Buddha. Just checking if there are any other conversations from the from attendees. All right, fantastic. Folks, I'm just going to jump straight in. Now, for the benefit of those who didn't attend last week's webinar, what we did is we covered about 5 components of formulating a growth strategy, right? Just for context, last week we covered 5 items that will help you to strategize more effectively. What I'm going to share with you today is how to formulate a business strategy, okay? So it's really picking up from last week, and one of the things we covered last week is the importance of having a business model, right? If you don't have a compelling value proposition, as well as a scalable and profitable business model, you can almost forget about a strategy, because your strategy will simply be based on a very weak foundation, so to speak. So we do have a recording from last week. If you do need that, and maybe you didn't attend last week's session, please just simply email me and we'll make sure to give you a link to watch that recording. Without further ado, as mentioned, the foundation is really a scalable business model. And following that, typically people will ask themselves, where do we go from here? Okay. And what you want to do is to, number one, understand the differences between these 2 pieces of documents, let's call them documents for lack of a better phrase. One, you typically have a business plan or a business strategy. Now, we're not talking business plan today. We are talking the second one, which is the business strategy. Now, what's the difference between the 2? A business plan is typically a document that communicates with people who aren't part of the business, right? Who are external to the business. It is typically used initially to start a business or to start a new business unit, or call it a new business function, so to speak. It is used for typically also for applying for funding. The business plan is what encapsulates this. And it also tends to change more often than a business strategy would. And the reason why a business plan would typically change is because you would have different audiences to which you present this document to. And so clients would typically evolve this document based on who they are presenting the document to. However, on the other end, a business strategy is different to a business plan, okay? A strategy is something that defines what people running and working in the business will use inside the business, internal. The strategic plan is what allows people inside the operation to work towards achieving a very clear and commonly understood objective or vision. A business strategy also defines the specific steps that are required to achieve that vision. In other words, it guides people within the business, and as far as execution is concerned, and how to go about implementation of that strategic plan, okay? And these are not the kind of documents you want to willy-nilly share with just everyone, okay? These are the strategic documents, or rather the strategy is your strategic document that you want to keep as safe as possible, but making sure that you are sharing it with everybody concerned within the business. Now, in order to show you how to go about formulating or defining your business strategy, we're going to use a methodology that we defined in-house. It's called the 8-step strategy puzzle. So I'm going to quickly share with you these 8 pieces as quickly as possible. And I hope you appreciate the fact that we only have under an hour now. And so there's only so much detail that I can cover with each one of these components. And if you are nice to me, I promise to send you a template of the report that you can then use to populate as much of this content as possible to help, to start defining that strategy. And if you already have a strategy in place, maybe you might feel that the template that we're going to send you might be more user-friendly. And so simply feel free to take your pieces, your content from existing documents, and simply paste it within this template. But more than anything, what you want to have a strategy that is detailed, that will help you make informed decisions, that gives clarity, and provide some sort of a benchmark in terms of where you are now, where you need to get to. And more importantly, it needs to serve as a positive stimulus, okay? And by positive stimulus, we mean it must be a stimuli for people you work with. So when you give them this document, they must feel stimulated, they must feel inspired, they must feel engaged in order to participate in the strategy. And more importantly, it must give you a clear plan of action. All right. Toyosi says she'd love the template. I promise I will send you the template as soon as we are done with this webinar, I'll prepare the recording as well and make sure I send everything to you. So I'll promise I'll definitely do that. Okay, all right. So I'm going to skip certain slides that I feel may not necessarily be important. So in the hope that we cover as much as possible. All right. Okay, so the first piece that we're going to look at is shareholder aspirations. And, you know, I'm always surprised whenever we facilitate the strategy session or the strategy formulation sessions for our clients, how critical this piece is. And it almost shakes them and also brings them together on the same page in terms of who actually wants what. And I'll give you an indication, right? So shareholder aspirations are really, you know, the kind of critical items that before you set out to create a growth strategy for business, it's really important to understand what is motivating the leadership and the key stakeholders of a business, right? When you define and discuss your shareholder aspirations as the key leadership in the business, this is where you really define your aspirations, what it is that you want, okay? You want to speak to the greater goals that are driving you folks as individuals within the managerial and leadership team. And these are really aspirations that speak to you as individuals, as human beings, as people, okay? Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that what you want as a person, as a human being, these are things that you can potentially achieve through your business. That's very important. It helps you to purposefully align both what you'd like to achieve as a human being and what you can actually achieve through your business. So what is an aspiration, right? An aspiration is a hope. It's an ambition. It's a strong desire to achieve something. And that's something in almost all cases is usually something big, okay? So owners and managers are human beings as well, as I mentioned, right? They have desires, they have aspirations and needs that motivate them and that will drive their behavior. And if you are wondering why certain people are not driven at work, it's primarily because they can't find a way of seeing how what they want personally can be achieved at work. And Dr. DiMartini has always said, if you want to motivate and engage people at work, you want to make sure that they believe that their personal desires and needs outside of work can be achieved at work. So you want to help them see that every time they wake up to go to work, that they feel that they're not only just helping the business to achieve its own goals, but that they too are achieving their needs and desires through that business, right? And so it's important to understand those aspirations in terms of how they can be aligned and potentially aligned to the company and the needs of the customers as well. So some examples of shareholder aspirations. And folks, just maybe let's use what I'm doing now as kind of the formula that we're going to use throughout the 8 pieces. I'm going to give you definitions of what the one piece of the puzzle looks like, and I'm going to give you examples as well. So that's really the formula that we're going to use to run. I hope that's fine with everyone. So shareholder aspirations, examples, right? You might say, I want to build a 1 billion rand or $1 billion billion annual turnover company. Whatever that aspiration is, this is what we're talking about. We want you to dream, and there's a thin line between dreams and fantasy, right? And it's really about being practical about what you can achieve and what you are willing to actually give and sacrifice in order to achieve that. The examples I'm going to give you may look materialistic as such, but this is about being able to measure the things that you want to achieve. Okay, you want to be as specific as possible, and don't be ashamed about being materialistic or feeling that you want to achieve or buy things. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, there's totally nothing wrong with that. So again, here are examples. Another example might be to list the company on the, say, something like the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Or the AltX exchange, whatever that may be. But what's important is to specify also the year or the timelines, right? Some people, some leaders in business have worked so hard all their lives that they don't have what's called work-life balance, right? So some of the leaders and their aspirations, they may aspire to work less in business. So put that down as an aspiration, okay? Again, you want to get out of the business what you want as a human being as well. So some people want to be able to work less so that they can be home at a certain time and maybe work only 4 days a week so that they can have family time, you know, spend quality time with their family for the remaining time of the week. That is an aspiration for some people that I've worked with, so our clients and whatever the case may be. At a personal level, you might say, I want to have a 10 million Rand net worth by a certain amount of years, okay? List that down. It's important to remind yourself, and what I was saying earlier about the importance of how it shakes the strategic team together, because a lot of business people, a lot of business leaders never sit down to actually understand each other and see what each other would like to achieve, what their partners, what their team members would like to achieve in the future. And trust me, when you get to know that your team member, your co-executive member would like to work less, and they too understand what you'd like to achieve, the idea of helping each other to achieve those goals, the probability of that success actually increases, okay? And it brings everybody to the same page, at least about what everybody would like to achieve. You might also say, you know what, you'd like to create 100 new jobs in the next 5 years, which is, I think, is a very important aspiration, considering where we are, how many businesses have failed over the last couple of years, or rather over the last couple of months, right? In terms of how COVID has just slashed so many businesses. Your aspiration might also be to retire in a few years' time, or you might even want to sell the company for a certain amount of money at a particular time. So these are aspirations, okay? These are, folks, these are critical. These are important in helping drive the strategy of the business. So that's piece number one. Piece number two are your core values. Now, it has been said many times over that culture eats strategy for breakfast. You know, this means without the right culture and without the right values in place, even the best strategy may never come to be. Values are generally apparent. They exist in the business, whether you've written them down or not. They front all of the business practices and behaviors already that exist. And so the articulation of the core values is important when laying down the principles and the work ethics that the company wants to cherish the most. And these typically outline how you do business and how you relate to customers, your suppliers, how you relate to each other. These core values are really the foundation of the company's culture, which is why it's important when you've defined the core values and you aspire to them and you follow those values and you abide by them, the likelihood of you having the kind of culture that you'd like to have in your business really, manifests, for lack of a better word. In corporate culture and performance, one of my favorite two people in business, at least in terms of thought leaders, Dr. John Cotter and his colleague James Heskett, they found that firms, right, that have value-based cultures will typically have high performance, and the high performance. The benefits that comes from this high performance include a 400% increase in higher revenue. There's a 700% greater job growth and job satisfaction. And if you look at that higher stock price, right, at 1,200% even more. And again, you might say, but every company has values. The thing is, how aligned are those values to the culture, right? How true are those? The examples like Enron, who had one of the, some of the greatest values in place. But if you look at how they behaved and how they took advantage of customers and stakeholders, clearly those were not aligned. Now, I'm going to share with you examples of companies that have just amazing values, and those values have manifested into a culture, and that culture has really, brought about the performance that the company leadership and obviously the people who work within those companies have always desired to achieve. The first one is Netflix, right? I love Netflix's values, and these are just some of them. Netflix's leadership and their staff will tell you that this is what drives their performance. Some of their values, they say, imagine if everyone at Netflix is someone you respect and learn from. That is a value, okay? Another value, you say what you think, even if it's controversial. And you make tough decisions without agonizing. You take smart risks, and you question actions that are inconsistent with their values. Now, this is different to what people are used to in terms of how you define values, but you want to define the kind of value that you can translate into a behavior, into an action. Sometimes people will say one of the famous values is integrity. I would question you and say, how do you behave? How do you ensure that there's integrity in your behavior, right? how you want to describe and define your value. You want to ensure that it is easy for somebody to see what the behavior that translates into that value. I'm going to share a few more examples of values. I'm not going to read through all of them, just going to select a few. For example, in HubSpot, if you search for HubSpot's values manifesto, they've written a book on this, on their values, some years ago. This is a company that now generates something about $500 million per annum. And this is a company that's only 15 years old. And the two founders and their leadership will always tell you that they attribute their success to their values. Their values is, again, what define their culture. And so this is their culture code. One of my favorites here is that they number two, which is they look for the long term and they solve for the customer. Now, solving for the customer really means that they are driven by customer success. If something is not going to help their customer to succeed, then it's something that they can avoid. Okay, so values are very important in defining the culture. One of my favorite companies is called ZAPPOS. The ZAPPOS family core values, as you can see them on the screen, and as you look at them, I'm going to tell you a little bit about ZAPPOS for those who don't know ZAPPOS. Tony Hsieh, who was a co-founder of ZAPPOS, he wasn't the guy who started ZAPPOS. It was somebody who had started this little startup and they were struggling to grow that business. And Tony Hsieh put in money, time, and effort to help build this company. Now, this company sold to Amazon for nearly $1.5 billion a few years ago. And they were quoted as saying, as we grow our company, it has become more and more important to explicitly define the core values from which we develop our culture, our brand, and our business strategies. Okay. Someone like Jeff Bezos. So Jeff Bezos of Amazon is the one who recognized how powerful this company was. And you can get no better endorsement really, like either than people, you know, if you get endorsements and investment from people like Jeff Bezos, then you know you've got it right. And what the main reason why he purchased ZAPPOS was because he loved their values and their culture so much that he wanted to translate that culture or make ZAPPOS also, or rather Amazon, to have similar values. And so there was an exchange of money for equity. And what I also loved about this transaction is how Tony Hsieh and his team decided to make half of that money, of that $1.5 billion an equivalent of shares. So they own a nice chunk of Amazon. And it's when you have great and aligned values, they are much easier to measure. For example, you can easily ask and measure if someone has actually delivered wow through service. So you can typically ask them through a performance measurement system to say, okay, tell us how you've delivered wow through service over the last 3 months or over the last couple of months. You know, companies like ZAPPOS use their values to do performance measurement, right? So during performance measurement, they will typically convert their core values into questions that they ask, and then they will rate you according to how you've performed in as far as those values are concerned. All right, I hope that's making sense, folks. Is this adding any value? Please just let me know. Maybe in the chat box, you can just say yes or no. I hope this is adding value to you this morning, that you don't feel like, oh, maybe you shouldn't be here today. I hope that's not the case. So I hope this is adding value and that it's opening up and inspiring you to some extent. Fantastic. All right, so core value, rather core purpose. What is your core purpose? A core purpose really defines, it gives your team a compelling reason why their work is important, right? They become emotionally invested in it. When they believe in what they're doing, they become more motivated, more energized, and more engaged in the company. So it's really an important piece that you want to make sure that forms part of your strategy, okay? This is one of those things that you do to humanize your strategy. There's a gentleman whom I'm sure all of you know. His name is Simon Sinek. Now, Simon Sinek is an author and a speaker who writes and thinks about leadership and business management. He's developed a very insightful concept called Start With Why. Now, Start With Why is also a book that really resonated throughout the business world. And if you just search for Simon Sinek, Start With Why, you'll see many links, including a short video that he did on this very concept. So what I'm going to show you today is really this concept that he talks about in that video and in his book is called the Golden Circle. Now, this concept is very simple, and I think that's really what makes it so powerful. right? Simon Sinek says that strong businesses have a simple golden circle structure as part of their core value and their core purpose. Now, he says that a lot of companies know exactly what they do, right? They know what their products and services are. And also they will typically know how they go about doing it, meaning what their value, what their unique value proposition is, what their unique selling proposition is. They might have, intellectual property that makes them unique and competitive. But he says very few companies know why they do what they do, okay? Now, the why of your business is your purpose, and your purpose really speaks to the cause. He goes on to say that most businesses, again, know what to do, they know how to do it, but very few know why. And one of the big things he says is customers don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Meaning, if your purpose is clear and compelling enough, customers are more likely to support you in your mission. So some statements and some examples that I'm going to give you that I felt was so empowering in as far as inspiring you to come up with your own examples. Now, some examples of companies like Apple. Apple's core purpose is not to think differently, okay? That's a marketing slogan. Apple's core purpose is to make a contribution to the world by making tools for the mind that advance humankind. Again, they want to contribute to the world by making tools, whether those tools are computers, cell phones, technology, software, whatever that may be, in order to help advance humankind. So that's their purpose. Google's core purpose is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible to everyone and useful to everyone around the world, regardless of what their financial status or background is. That's their core purpose. Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble say, we provide branded products and services of superior quality and value that improve the lives of the world's consumers now and for generations to come. So again, this is the purpose statement that drives why they are in business. One of my favorite companies, Southwest Airlines, was one of those very few airlines that stayed profitable even during the most difficult of financial times. Again, I'm speaking specifically prior to COVID-19, because we know how COVID-19 has really affected the airline industry. But prior to that, Southwest Airlines was one of the very, very few companies that were very successful, even during economic meltdowns. And they always attributed their purpose statements and their core values, aka their culture, that's helped them to become as successful as they were. And their core purpose is to connect people to what's important in their lives through friendly, reliable, and low-cost air travel. Disney's core purpose is nice, sweet, and short. They say it's to create magic and to make people and families happy. And for those who have kids or for those who are grown up but still watch these, the movies from Disney, and I know when you're sitting down there, you're watching those movies, you can really feel that magic and feel happy to some extent. I know I do when I'm, sitting with my kids and we're watching these movies. So again, it's really about how do the products and services translate to help the company to achieve its purpose. And my ultimate favorite purpose statement is really from Nike. Nike's purpose statement is not to just do it. Again, that's a marketing slogan. Nike's core purpose statement is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And they say, for as long as you have a body, you too are an athlete. And I don't know about you, but whenever I put my Nikes on, I really feel like that super athlete that can jump the highest of hurdles. So these are just examples of purpose statements. The question is, do you have one, right? If you don't, I hope that you'll draw some inspiration from this. And again, all of these really speak to defining a strategy, because you want to build a strategy on a very strong foundation. If you also are looking for additional inspiration for defining your core purpose, look at the United Nations Sustainable Goals. You can really get inspiration from those goals as well. You can choose 1, 2, but not more than 3 that you can connect to, that your business can pursue in order to help drive the business forward. And just lastly, around the core purpose, one of my favorite authors, Jim Collins, he says, why does your organization do what it does? Okay. This is what will help you to define your core purpose. All right. You want to know why your organization truly exists. What is its functional benefit to customers? What is the ultimate value to customers? And this does not necessarily speak to your value proposition. The question you want to answer with your purpose statement is, we are providing our customers with this value proposition. And the question is, why? Why are you providing your customers with that value proposition? There needs to be an ultimate core purpose at the end of the day through which you are wanting to achieve. All right, strategic vision. Now, here's the thing. We've covered three very important components of a business strategy. This fourth one is typically where most businesses will start to define their strategy. And can you see how people will typically disconnect or not connect with their strategy? Because they haven't covered the human components. They haven't covered the truly inspirational and motivational components of why people need to buy into a strategy. So without further ado, strategic vision is really where the business wants to be in the next 3 to 5 years, okay? It asks, what are the measurable objectives that you are going to put in place in order to achieve this? The strategic vision is really a simple and a single overall goal that the company's management decides they want to pursue. Unlike the core purpose you'll never truly achieve, okay? Because it's a greater goal, a greater aspiration that you will forever chase. And it goes beyond the business in its current form, right? It's something that your business might even evolve over time to continue to pursue. However, the strategic vision is something that needs to be measurable, something that you can describe as a very specific milestone that the firm or the company must achieve in future and may require many years to achieve it. But you don't want to make it more than 10 years, okay? As mentioned, you want to make this anywhere between 3 to 5 years as a strategic vision, and it must be something that you achieve. And after that, you refine the vision and make your vision a brand new vision after you've achieved it. Your strategic vision is selected and crafted with intention, with being specific. And your vision should be challenging enough so that people nearly gasp when they learn of what it is that you want to achieve. Because, they say if your vision or your goal doesn't scare you enough, the likelihood of you being motivated and inspired to achieve it will really be less than ideal. And a vision is shared is crucial to achieving your business goals. It helps to create a sense of community amongst the staff, amongst leadership, making the journey more satisfying. Now, as mentioned, your strategic vision needs to be SMART, and SMART is an abbreviation of specific, meaning you want to state what you'll do as specifically as possible. And secondly, you want to make sure it's measurable. Okay, measurable meaning you want to provide a way to be able to evaluate and benchmark to see, are you heading in the right direction? And obviously you want to make it achievable. Remember, we spoke about dreaming and fantasy. Something that's not achievable is typically because it's more of a fantasy than it is a realistic dream. So it needs to be achievable. And obviously it's got to be relevant, right? Make sure it makes sense within the job function, within the business function, in as far as what the business does. And lastly, it has to be time bound. There has to be specific time when you want to achieve this. So I love this graphic. We copied this graphic from Fit Small Business. That's really giving credit to the originator of, or at least this particular graphic. All right, so examples of strategic vision. Where do you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years' time? Again, this is the question that strategic vision answers. You want to make sure it's measurable and that you've got items and tactics in place that are going to help you realize it. Some examples. Example number one, a strategic vision might be you want to become a 100 million rand turnover company in 5 years' time, okay? It's very specific and it's very measurable. It's 100 million rand and it's in turnover and it's within the next 5 years. This is clearly a SMART goal. Example number two, to become a 125 billion rand company by the year 2000. This was Walmart, okay? I love this example. And they actually ended up achieving the strategic vision 2 years sooner. And it's because they were so intentional about it. They were very clear. Everybody in the business knew exactly what they needed to achieve and how they were going to go about achieving it. So for some inspiration and just to show you how massive what seemingly unrealistic goals can be achieved as well. I mean, the number just blows me away at 125 billion rands. And obviously, I think the company is worth 4 times this at this stage, if I'm not mistaken. Example number 3 is a strategic vision one of our clients had said they want to sell the company for R500 million by July 2025. This is a realistic goal, and they are working towards it. Yes, COVID-19 has kind of distracted them, or rather, created more than a snag. However, when you have a strategic vision, you know how to adapt and change accordingly in terms of the circumstances that you may have. And lastly, example number 4. This is one that we came across recently with one of the clients that we were working with to define a strategy. Because of the impact of COVID-19, the new strategy is to become a 100% digital company with no physical stores, generating 100% of their income via e-commerce by December 2023. Right? I love that example because it's very specific, it's measurable, and it's seriously achievable. There's a time limit to it, and it's clearly relevant in as far as not only the current circumstances, but it also speaks to what the company can achieve. So next to this, after this, so once you've defined what it is that you'd like to achieve, you want to then step outside of the business, okay? You want to do an audit of the market forces. You want to do a market audit where you critically and importantly, you honestly look at your internal strengths and weaknesses, as well as the opportunities outside and the threats in the market that will allow you to gain an understanding of your capabilities as you have them now, and what you have to build in order to then achieve your strategic vision. Okay, this includes looking at your customers. One of the best ways to look at what your strategy should be, in as far as your target market, your competitors, and so forth, you want to look at your top 10 customers. Okay, and I'm sure you remember that the 80-20 rule. It says, and as far as customers is concerned, it says 20% of your customers will typically be generating 80% of your revenue. And if you want to look at how you can best restructure or realign your strategy around your customers, is look at who are your top 10 customers. Once you've defined that profile, you want to do everything that you can in order to pursue, i.e. finding more and more of those customers. Okay, so you want to look at your customers, you want to look at your competition, you want to look at your top 10 products and services, and obviously who your suppliers and strategic partners are. As soon as a clear picture of these market opportunities avail themselves, that are clarified, then there's really scope to start understanding the reality of your company's capabilities. Okay, and a great way of looking at your market is to look at 2 items, to look at 2 very, very traditional tools and methodologies, but they work extremely well. One of them is your SWOT analysis. Okay, your SWOT analysis will really help you look at your strengths, your weaknesses, which are typically internal, right? Internal, we mean inside the business, and your opportunities and threats are really outside of the business. Okay, it's very critical. And if you want to expand on this, you want to look at something called a PESTEL analysis. Now, after you've looked at your SWOT analysis, you want to go global. You want to look at a macro level. You want to look at politically, right? The P stands for political. You want to look at how things like BEE, if you're in South Africa, from a political perspective, how these would typically affect your business, right? And then next is E. The E is economic. You want to look at how the economic forces, for example, the rand dollar exchange rate, how it could be affecting you. Is is the inflation maybe? You want to look at how all of these forces, especially when you project in the future, how they potentially affect you. The S stands for social. This speaks to income distribution and demographics. And I think this has really come alive and is important to note now when you're formulating your strategy in terms of how COVID-19 has really affected society in as far as everyone's income right across the spectrum. So you don't want to look at the market without looking at how phenomena like COVID-19 has impacted society, your customers and your suppliers and everybody else really. Next is T. The T in PESTEL is technology. Clearly, digital transformation is critical to look at right now. You don't want to formulate a strategy without taking into consideration where the state of technology is, and therefore how you could adapt your business to digital technology. The E stands for environment. Are there environmental restrictions that you may need to look at? I mean, if you look at in South Africa at least, right, the ban of cigarettes and the ban of alcohol, these are all kind of restrictions that we all had, but those may may fall more under the political aspect of PESTEL analysis. And again, when you've been hit that hard or you've been restricted that hard, you want to see how your strategy can help you overcome those challenges. And lastly is L in PESTEL analysis. The L really looks at legal frameworks. Okay, and again, if we look at the banning of cigarettes and alcohol, these were legal regulations that affected, i.e. it was illegal to actually sell those products and services. And you can imagine really the impact that's had on these kind of businesses. So that's from a SWOT or market analysis perspective. You know, what I always say as a tip to customers, to clients, and, you know, whether we are supporting them to formulate their strategy or they're doing it by themselves, is at this point, once you've taken a look at your PESTEL analysis and your SWOT analysis, you want to go back and review your business model, because the likelihood is you will come out, if you do this right, by the way, if you do your market analysis, your competitor analysis, your PESTEL and your SWOT analysis properly, there's a great likelihood that it means you need to review and revisit rather your business model and your buyer personas, because it may mean that you need to change them. And remember what I said earlier, if you look at your customers and you look at your top 10 customers, the likelihood is those 20% of your customers you can and should focus on, and maybe you may need to start avoiding the rest of them who don't necessarily fit that buyer persona profile. I hope that makes sense. All right, so I know sometimes this piece is typically confusing. We are talking holistically strategy, but also this piece of the puzzle is also called strategy. I'm going to give you some information that I think were eye-opening for me when I came across them just over a decade ago. A strategy is more than just a strategy. A strategy can be broken up into 3 different types of strategies, okay? So if you were on your phone, you were distracted, please pay attention to what I'm going to show you, because I thought this was important for any business leader to understand, right? So at this stage of the strategy formulation process, we are now in a position to understand the company's potential growth, right? By matching the market opportunities that we discussed from a SWOT analysis perspective just previously with our internal capabilities, right? This is where we gather through the analysis again from the previous step. What we're going to do now is we're going to go through this particular piece by looking at 3 different things that you need to understand. Again, it's about looking at market opportunity and comparing it with the company's competitive edge and advantage points, meaning its internal capability. Now, you already know what your goals are. Remember, your piece number 4 is your strategic vision. You know what that goal is, okay? Now you need to decide on a strategy, how you're going to get there. In other words, you need a strategy that is defined as a summary of how the company will best utilize its competitive edge and other tactics to achieve its strategic vision, okay? And the strategy will typically encapsulate how these goals will be achieved, right? And unfortunately, a lot of companies can't answer this. If you ask anybody within the business, what is your strategy? How are you going to achieve it? A lot of faces go blank at this stage. So to further expand on the business strategy, I highly recommend that you look at this book. It's called The Discipline of Market Leaders. It's a very old book, and I don't think you can find it on Kindle. It went out of print many, many years ago. But I think if you search for something like Discipline of Market Leaders and you put in PDF in your search, you may find summaries of this book. And because how the authors wrote the book, you know, they encapsulated the learnings out of this book very early on in the book, so you'll truly be able to take out what I'm going to share with you next, right? So basically what they're saying in this book is that you must choose one of 3 fundamental strategies to build a workable strategy. Okay, here we go. Strategy number 1, so again, you have a strategy, but that strategy can be one of 3. So your strategy can typically be one of 3. And what I'm going to show you next are the different types of strategies you have. The type strategy number 1 is you can be a company that has or focuses on operational excellence. Okay. Operational excellence really looks at delivering quality, price, and ease of purchase and utility. So if you understand South African context, you can really compare companies like Pick n Pay versus Woolworths, right? Those two companies provide exactly the same things. However, there are nuances in as far as differences, okay? For example, people will know that Woolworths truly focuses on quality, but Pick n Pay focuses on ease of use, meaning convenience. It's about going in, getting what you need very quickly at a low price and leaving, but you can never compare that quality to Woolworths. Okay, it doesn't mean Pick n Pay doesn't provide quality. Woolworths does, though, provide a much higher quality. Now, what are the features of a strategy that contains operational excellence? This strategy will typically mean that the operations of the company are standardized, they are simplified, they are tightly controlled, and that management systems focus on integrating and reliable high-speed transactions, meaning they're all about quantity and not so much about quality, right? And the culture here really focuses on reducing waste and they reward efficiency. Again, it's about going in very quickly, buying what you need to buy and get out. So if you have experience with Pick n Pay, you'll know that it's not necessarily the friendliest of environments, meaning when you come in, you don't necessarily get greeted as such, right? You know, you go in, you do your thing, you go pay by the till and you leave. However, if you compare this at Woolworths, there might be a slightly warmer reception from people who work in the business. And also you'll understand that when you walk inside these two places, even the environment, right? The temperature of the shop or the supermarket is actually different when you compare Pick n Pay to Woolworths. So anyway, that's really to give you an idea of the difference between a strategy. Now, Woolworths doesn't focus on operational excellence. It doesn't mean they are not excellent operationally. It just means they are focusing on a different strategy, okay? A different type of strategy at least, all right? Now, in explaining this, strategy number 2, a different type of strategy, okay? Product leadership is another type of strategy. This is about creating the best products or services. Now, if you look at Apple and Dell, they both do the same thing, right? However, you can clearly and easily identify that Apple has a much better product leadership than Dell. Dell makes computers, they are convenient, they work. However, when it comes to design, when it comes to sophistication, when it comes to that edge, we can all agree that Apple really pushes that envelope in as far as that's concerned. Now, what are the features of a product leadership strategy? Okay, it's really a loosely knit business culture that is ever changing to adjust entrepreneurial initiatives. So people within the business will typically be very entrepreneurial, okay, because they are always wanting to explore unexplored territory. They are results-driven management system. They measure reward in as far as new products and innovation is concerned. Again, companies that choose a product leadership strategy will typically be pushing innovation more than others in the competitive landscape, right? They also have a culture that encourages individual imagination. They want you to go out there, think out the box, and really come up with innovative products that will help the company achieve its desired future. And lastly, the third type of strategy is about focusing on customer intimacy, okay? Compare Investec and F&B. Both of these companies are in banking. However, F&B can easily said to be a company that is using the operational excellence strategy because they're all about providing people the same kind of product with the same kind of investment products. It doesn't matter who you are, okay? For as long as you fit a specific profile, right, we'll give you an off-the-shelf investment package, and there you go. However, Investec focuses on customer intimacy, meaning they'll get to know you as an individual and they'll customize a very bespoke investment package specifically for you, not just investment, but also their banking services and everything else that they do will specifically be for you. They'll be bespoke. You know, you'll have, for example, you'll typically have bankers within companies like Investec who are focusing on 5, maybe 10 clients, right? And those clients will typically be high net worth clients, okay? High net worth clients don't go to F&B as such. And there's a huge difference. The difference is because high net worth clients will typically want that customer intimacy that companies like F&B don't provide. So What you're seeing on the screen now are the 3 different types of strategies that you could have in your company. All right. I'm just going to look at questions if we have any at this stage. Just give me a sec to do that. Folks, I hope this is making sense. Are you still getting value out of this? I hope that's still the case. We are just about to finish. I will unfortunately have to rush through the next couple of slides. As I mentioned, we always have a lot to cover, and I never really want to not give you the amount of value that we give you. So examples of strategy. Apple's strategy is to develop and sell innovative, superior products of which blend art and technology in order to provide a simple and streamlined user experience. So this is Apple's strategy. You also, as a company, need to define your strategy. What I'm doing now is giving you examples of strategy. Next, Scooters had one of the best strategies that helped them, grow significantly. In short, their strategy, and I'm sure some of you will remember this, it was Domino's Pizza, but locally we knew them as Scooters Pizza. Their strategy was, we will deliver your pizza in 39 minutes or it's free, okay? That was a strategy that they used for 3 to 5 years, and it really helped take their business to great heights. DELL strategy, 2 words, sell direct. This is exactly how they started out, meaning you didn't go into a shop to find out similar specs as everybody else. They would typically build a custom computer for you. So they sold direct to purchasers and to users of computers. Southwest Airlines, simple, wheels up. They use small planes, and it was really about short distances. As soon as the plane lands, they clean it up very quickly, and they load the next set of passengers, and they fly off to the next destination. So it was really about quick, short distance trips. That was their strategy. INFUSIONSOFT strategy was to create and dominate the market for all-in-one sales and marketing software for small businesses with that very specific number of customers, which was 100,000 worldwide. Again, this is how they define their strategy. How A-Game defines the strategy. Our strategy is to provide high-impact strategies, training, and digital technology solutions that improve our clients' business performance, revenue, and brand equity. So this really speaks to how you can articulate your business strategy. Step number 7, in as far as formulating your business strategy, you want to make sure that you provide, fund, and resource the people, the tools, the technology, the infrastructure, and operations that the company needs in order to execute a strategy. And there are very specific areas that you want to look at, and those areas will typically be sales and marketing, your people component, and obviously the operations, and as far as infrastructure, technology, and the tools that everybody needs to use. So what I'll do, folks, I'm going to send you this list so that I don't waste time going through it. But you'll typically have very specific things under your sales and marketing from an operations perspective that you want to attend to, okay? Under your people, there'll typically be very specific objectives that you want to do that's going to help you execute your strategy. Under your operational objectives, you'll typically have those as well. And I do promise I will send these to you. They are actually contained in the template that I mentioned earlier. So don't worry about me not giving you these. You'll definitely get them in the template. And then lastly, once you've defined all of these pieces of your business strategy, you want to know what you are going to do next, okay? And this is where a lot of businesses fail. They'll have this document that says we must do all of these things, but once the document is complete, it doesn't say specifically immediately after that what should be happening. And here are examples of what should be happening, right? Maybe just some context, excuse me. The strategy needs to have very specific actions, very specific points. This is where you finalize the immediate steps that one must take. This speaks to tasks and requirements that the company still needs. Why is this important? This is important because 85% of strategies never get executed, okay? Imagine that. And I know you're familiar with this, where a lot of companies will typically have a document and it just sits in the top drawer, or whatever the case may be, and it just it collects dust and never gets executed. Why is this the case? This is typically because people don't necessarily have critical action steps, nor do they know how to execute it. So again, these action steps you will have in your template. What I want to show you next very quickly is a tool that speaks to how do you execute. Now that you have the document, how do you execute? What you want to do next is to have a balanced scorecard and objectives and key results. Okay. I don't know if you've heard of something called a balanced scorecard. A balanced scorecard is typically what will help you to take all of the objectives that you now need to achieve from an operations perspective, your strategic vision, all of the things that we discussed. You want to allocate them into these 4 pieces of your balanced scorecard in order to help you measure them, right? Now, in case you're wondering, the balanced scorecard was a strategic tool that was defined a couple of decades ago by 2 gentlemen, Robert S. Kaplan and David Norton. These 2 gentlemen created this tool called the balanced scorecard. It looks very simple, but trust me, even companies like McKinsey and the Deloitte of this world will typically use a balanced scorecard in order to measure a strategy's execution. Now, a balanced scorecard will help you in management to mobilize change through execution from a leadership perspective. It'll help you take those 8 pieces that were discussed and help you translate them into operational plans, right, that you can execute over time. It'll help you align the organization to the strategy and help you motivate the strategy to everyone's jobs and to govern and to make sure that strategy is a continual process. What you are seeing here is really an example of what that balanced scorecard can look like in as far as an Excel spreadsheet template is concerned. So what you want to do is to take all of those pieces that we discussed, right, in as far as your operational plan and your people plan, and have anywhere between 3 to 5 components for each item, i.e. under your financial, under your customers, under your internal process. You want to have what's called strategic objectives. You want to be able to measure them and have targets. And more importantly, you want to say who actually and which business unit is going to be in charge of that very specific item. And lastly, when you have your balanced scorecard laid out, then you want to have a tool that can help to automate and help keep track of those items. Now, we always recommend a tool called Align today, and I will make sure to send you a link for you to see a demo of that tool. I'll send you that particular link. There are videos that you can watch now. There are pretty much 3 things that need to happen. Number 1 is you define your strategy using that 8-piece puzzle piece for a template that we showed you. Secondly is you want to use the balanced scorecard to lay out the important and critical components of your strategy and be able to measure them. And lastly, you want to have a tool that will help you keep track. You want to automate things like who needs to do what. And if there are tasks that relate to your strategy that are not being attended to, you want the tool to tell you, right, well ahead of time. You don't want to let months and months pass by before you realize that critical things have not been attended to. I.e., you want to measure your goals and always have foresight and gain insight in as far as the performance by using an online system. All right, folks, that's really it. And I did say we're going to really cover a lot. I hope this session was useful. It's 10 o'clock on the dot. I hope you've gotten value. If you do need any assistance with this, you've got my email address. Please feel free to simply email it. And one of the ways through which we help companies, especially small businesses, to implement and execute their strategy is through our Business Accelerator program. If you are interested in learning more about our Accelerator program, simply go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen. And if you need to see it, if you need me to send it to you, I'd be more than happy to do that. You know what? As a matter of fact, when I send you the template, I'll make sure to email it to you as well. So thank you very much for your time. I hope it was useful. And if you have any questions, I'm here for a few more minutes. I'll take questions. But without taking any more of your time, I just want to thank you for making the time this morning. I hope it was useful. Thank you very much. All right, wonderful. I'm glad it was valuable. It's always a pleasure to get positive feedback. Again, I do promise I'll send you that email with the strategy template. It'll also include links to things like Align Today and maybe more resources in as far as the balanced scorecard is concerned. Katlego, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. I'm glad you got value out of it. Okay, great. I've got your email address. I'll make sure to copy that as we speak so I don't lose it. But because you're registered, I'll make sure that I use that email address. But if it's obviously different to this one, I'll make sure I use this one. Folks, thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'll stick around for another minute or so. Otherwise, I look forward to engaging with you. If you do need any help, if you want to chat, even if it's just to ask questions or whatever the case may be, please feel free to reach out. My team and I are always happy to assist. So cheers. Have a wonderful day ahead and enjoy the rest of the week. All right, we've got a question from Carl. Carl, it's great to see you here again. Thank you very much. Carl is a wonderful, highly experienced business strategist as well. Thank you. He says, great presentation. Carl says, I find that when people do SWOT, that they do not really measure market competitiveness against the market need and competitor offering. How do you handle that? Very good question. So some of the questions that we would ask, and maybe there was a slide that I skipped, Carl. I'm gonna see if I actually have it in here. Let's see if I have slides, because there's so much information here that we do hide some of these slides when we do webinars, because you know there's so much to cover. All right, so we didn't look at the slide, so it might be helpful. So how do we handle looking at competitiveness? They may sound very simple, but they're very powerful, especially if you answer them, right? You want to ask yourself, which companies out there are really like you, okay? And one of the things we said is you need to be realistic, okay? I think a lot of businesses tend to just dream, and they tend to think that they are the ones who are special. They're the ones who are amazing and great in sliced bread, right? Those are the kind of people who really miss the mark. One of the things you want to do is you want to be honest and ask yourself the following questions and actually answer them honestly. You want to know which companies are there that are thinking exactly like you, that are exactly like you, okay? And one of the best ways to find out if you don't know who you're competing with, ask your customers, right? Remember we mentioned looking at your top 10 customers. Go back to your top 10 customers and say, who else in the market do you see as potentially being a competitor to us, right? That's how you get to find out who they are. Find out where these people are based. Find out what things that are similar as yours and how different are they to you, and therefore how different are you to them. And make sure that you verify that this is valuable in as far as your clients are concerned, not just how you think, you know, how similar you are or different you are. Ask the people who are buying from you both in order to get that clarity and to get verified information. You want to check their strengths and weaknesses. And again, you can truly look at a company. You can even, you know, go undercover incognito and go and find out, you know, become a customer within your competitors and find out how you can do that. So these are some of the ways that you can do it. But what's important, it's really about being realistic. Okay, that's very important. Be realistic and be honest. Carl, I hope that helps. It's really about being honest and putting in the effort to ask yourself these simple questions and making sure that you answer them. I hope that helps. All right, folks, there aren't any other questions. All right, all right, Carl says on a practical level, use KDI, key decisions indicators, 100%. So what we do is with the scorecard, right? Once you've formulated the you know, call it the objectives that needs to be shared and measured, you want to know what the key decision indicators are, which speaks to what is the lag indicators and what are the lead indicators. This will ensure that you are able to see way ahead whether you are achieving your goal or not. You're 100% right, Carl. What happens, people typically tend to wait until it's too late before they see whether they're meeting their targets or not. Key decision indicators, again, they're inherent within the balanced scorecard. And another way to do this, which I really love, is using OKRs, which are known as objectives and key results. It's another way of at least identifying what the key decisions are, what the key measurements are. But that last tool that I mentioned, which is Align Today, helps you with is it helps you to give you a scorecard, that gives you live numbers, dynamic numbers that move and change according to how your staff and leadership is actually contributing towards the strategy. All right, so Carl, we typically don't send out the slides. What we do is we send out the video, and again, it takes you through exactly the same slides, and it obviously has the slide that I'm showing you now that I've showed it live. Okay. So yeah, it's nearly 10 past. Folks, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. I will make sure that I send you that link to the video and more importantly to the template as well. So thanks again for your time. Cheers, folks. Bye.